Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next 30 minutes. US Chamber of Commerce sues Trump administration over $100,000 H-1B visa fee, terms it unlawful as it overrides provisions of Immigration and Nationality Act. Trump talks to Putin ahead of meet with Zelensky, touting progress in Russia-Ukraine peace talks to meet the Russian president in Hungary in a couple of weeks. Israel and Hamas trade blame over violations of ceasefire deal. Hamas says committed to hand over all bodies of hostages, but some may be buried under debris. Trump threatens action if killings continue in Gaza. Madagascar coup leader Michael Rajoelina to sworn in as president as African Union suspends the island nation's membership. UN condemns the move, urges return to constitutional order. The US Chamber of Commerce has filed a legal challenge to the administration's $100,000 US dollars fee on H-1B visa petitions. In a lawsuit filed on Thursday in Washington, D.C., the chamber asked the court to declare President Donald Trump exceeded the executive branch's authority by imposing the fee and block federal government agencies from enforcing it. The chamber argued that the new fee is unlawful and threatens the country's access to global talent. The chamber, in a statement, said the new visa fee will make it cost prohibitive for US employers, especially startups and small and mid-sized businesses, to utilize the H-1B program, the program that was created by the Congress expressly to ensure that American businesses of all sizes can access global talent they need to grow their operations in the US. Before the proposed $100,000 charge, most H-1B applications cost less than $3,600. The chamber contends the steep fee could force businesses to reduce skilled hires or bear unsustainable labor costs, especially in tech and consulting sectors. The lawsuit marks the chamber's first legal action against the Trump administration since it took office. In other developments, a row over the return of bodies of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza retains the potential to upend the truce along with other major planks of the plan yet to be resolved, including disarmament of militants and Gaza's future governance. Israel says it was preparing for the reopening of Gaza's Rafah crossing with Egypt to let Palestinians in and out, but set no date as it traded blame with Hamas over violations of the US-mediated ceasefire. Israel says it remains committed to the deal but is demanding that Hamas returns the bodies of 19 Israeli hostages still unaccounted for. So far, Hamas has handed over 10 bodies, but Israeli officials claim one of them was misidentified and not among the hostages. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reaffirmed Israel's position, saying the country will meet all its war objectives and that its enemies will face consequences.
They worked shoulder to shoulder to achieve all of the war's goals, and we will achieve all of the war's goals. Whoever raises their hand on us already knows that they will pay a very heavy price for their aggression. We are determined to complete the victory that will affect our lives for many years.
On the other side, a senior Hamas official accused Israel of violating the ceasefire, alleging that at least 24 Palestinians have been killed in shooting since Friday. He said the group has submitted a list of those incidents to international mediators. Hamas insists it remains committed to the agreement, but claims returning some of the remains is delayed as they're buried deep within tunnel networks. US President Donald Trump weighed in on the situation, suggesting the ceasefire should end if Hamas continues to kill people.
Well, I'm looking at what's happening, and that wasn't the deal that was made, and we'll see what happens. It's calmed down. It's a tough neighborhood. We know that. We have a commitment from them, and I assume they're going to honor that commitment. I hope they do. And I understand they brought back some additional bodies today. It's a rough deal when you think of it, right? Very rough. We have our hostages back completely. We were very lucky with that. But it's a tough situation. They brought back bodies today, as you probably know. But they also said they're going to behave. We're going to find out if they behave. If they behave, good. If they don't behave, we'll take care of it.
While frustration grows in Israel over the incomplete return of hostages remains, the US has played down suggestions that the delay constitutes a formal breach of the ceasefire. US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed on Thursday to hold another summit on the Ukraine conflict. Trump said he would meet Russian President Putin in Hungary after a telephonic conversation with Putin on Thursday. Talking to media in the Oval Office, the US president said the call, the first with Putin since mid-August, was very productive, adding that teams from Washington and Moscow will meet next week. The Kremlin confirmed plans for the meeting, though neither side provided a date for when it would occur.
I would say within 2 weeks or so, pretty quick. Marco Rubio is going to be meeting with his counterpart, as you know, Lavrov, and they'll be meeting pretty soon. They're going to set up a time and a place very shortly. Maybe it's already set up. They've already spoken. And I thought it was a very good phone call. I thought very productive. But I'll be meeting with President Putin, and we'll make a determination. Tomorrow I'm meeting with President Zelensky, and I'll be telling him about the call.
Meanwhile, Kremlin said Russian president told Trump that supplying US Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine would harm the peace process and damage US-Russia ties. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov told reporters that a planned new summit between the two presidents will be preceded by a phone call between US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the coming days. He further added Putin-Trump call took place at Russia's initiative. And Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán posted on X saying the meeting was great news for the peace-loving people of the world, adding that we're ready. In another post, Orbán stated that he had spoken to President Trump and preparations for the summit were underway. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, hopes the momentum of the West Asia peace deal will help the conflict and the Ukraine conflict as he arrived in the United States on Thursday. Zelensky will meet US President Trump on Friday, his third meeting since January. The subject of Tomahawk missiles is likely to be high on agenda. The leaders exchanged phone calls last week discussing the possibility of the United States approving Tomahawk missiles for Ukraine to ramp up pressure on Russia. Trump and Zelensky last met at the White House in August, shortly after American president met Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Ukraine is pushing for US Tomahawk missiles to strengthen its defenses against Russia. Its President Zelensky has asked the US to allow European allies to send long-range weapons as the battlefield needs to grow and diplomacy stalls. The request has sparked debate over escalation, cost and impact, while Russia warns of consequences. The US and its allies have tested GPS-enabled Tomahawk missiles in live combat scenarios. These missiles were recently deployed by US and UK navies against the Houthi targets in Yemen. Military targets call Tomahawk a game-changer for deep strike operations. These cruise missiles can hit targets up to 1,600 kilometers away. Each missile is 20 feet long, has an 8.5-foot wingspan and weighs over 3,300 pounds. They're currently in service with the navies of the United States, UK, Australia and the Netherlands. Raytheon manufactures the non-nuclear Tomahawk, which can launch from land or sea. The US plans to purchase 57 new Tomahawks in 2026, each costing $1.3 million. Millions of dollars are being invested to upgrade their precision guidance system. President Zelensky has asked US to allow European allies to send Tomahawk to Ukraine remains unclear which countries could supply the missiles or how they would be delivered. Russian President Putin has warned that sending Tomahawks to Ukraine would escalate tensions with Washington. Ukraine's call for Tomahawk missiles reflects its urgent need for long-range firepower. While US weighs its options, Russia has warned of escalation, with Trump reconsidering amid stalled peace talks, and decision could reshape battlefield dynamics and diplomatic relations. All eyes now on Washington and its next move. The White House will announce a list of Democrat programs slated for closure on Friday. Trump earlier on Tuesday said the ongoing government shutdown presents an opportunity to permanently eliminate what he called Democrat programs. Clarifying his remarks later, the president, as per the report, said Democratic programs include things that he says we disagree with, though he did not specify which agencies or initiatives would be affected. Republican programs, he emphasized, would not be terminated. In Washington, the government shutdown entered its 16th day on Thursday as Senate Democrats blocked a $852 billion defense funding bill to fund the Pentagon for a full year. The vote, 50-44, fell short of the 60 needed to advance, deepening the political stalemate. Democrats insist they would not approve defense spending without funding for vital programs like healthcare and housing. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said they won't fund defense while Americans struggle with basic needs. Republicans fired back, accusing the Democrats of playing politics at the expense of American troops. Despite controlling the Congress and the White House, Republicans lacked the votes to break the impasse. The U.S. military carried out new strike on Thursday against suspected drug vessel in Caribbean, and in what is to be believed to be the first such case, there were survivors among the crew. The development raises new questions, including whether the U.S. military rendered aid to survivors and whether they are now in U.S. military custody. Prior to Thursday's operations, U.S. military strikes against suspected drug boats off Venezuela killed at least 27 people, raising alarms among some legal experts and democratic lawmakers who question whether they adhere to laws of war. Videos presented by Trump administration of previous attacks shows vessels being completely destroyed, and there have been no prior accounts of survivors afterwards. Moving on, Madagascar's new military ruler, Colonel Michael Rajoelina, will be sworn in as president on Friday. The High Constitutional Court will perform the swearing-in ceremony of the new president. The colonel said earlier that the military had taken power and dissolved all institutions except the lower house of parliament or National Assembly. He also said a committee led by military would rule for up to 2 years alongside a transitional government before organizing new election. Rajoelina also said he was open to talks with African Union after it suspended the country's membership following the military coup. And United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Thursday condemned the unconstitutional change of government in Madagascar and called for a return to constitutional order and the rule of law.
The Secretary General condemns the unconstitutional change of government power in Madagascar and calls for the return to constitutional order and the rule of law. He takes note of the decision taken by the Peace and Security Committee of the African Union to immediately suspend the country from participation in all activities of the African Union, its organs and institutions, until constitutional order is restored in the country. The Secretary General encourages all Malagasy stakeholders, including the youth, to work together to address the underlying causes of instability in Madagascar. He reiterates the availability of the United Nations to support these national efforts towards the attainment of that goal in collaboration with the African Union and the Southern African Development Community and other international partners.
Peru's new government to declare a state of emergency in Lima in response to the ongoing violence of organized crime, which has led to massive protest. Hundreds were injured. One person was shot dead by a police officer after demonstrations erupted. The protest called by young Gen Z protesters, transport workers and civil groups was the latest in a series of demonstrations against corruption and rising crime. Police fired tear gas while some protesters hurled fireworks, rocks and burning objects. President Jerry expressed regret over the death of one person. He blamed violence on the delinquents who infiltrated a peaceful demonstration to sow chaos. In Ecuador, indigenous protesters have agreed to end demonstrations in Imbabura province following a deal with the government. The unrest was sparked by President Daniel Noboa's decision to cut fuel subsidies, leading to days of rallies. Ecuador's largest indigenous organization reported one death and over 100 injuries during the protest. The group announced the strike ends today, marking a turning point in the standoff. The agreement aims to ease tensions and restore calm in the region. Japan's two biggest political parties, the Liberal Democratic Party and the Constitutional Democratic Party, reached a broad agreement to hold parliamentary vote to select the next Prime Minister on 21st of October. Earlier, Liberal Democratic Party, led by its new leader, Sanae Takaichi, proposed the date. Opposition parties objected to the schedule, citing ongoing coalition talks. The LDP has approached the right-leaning opposition Japan Innovation Party in a bid to secure a majority vote and expand its coalition, which would enable Takaichi to become Japan's first female Prime Minister. UN has warned that nearly 80% of the world's poorest, or about 900 million people, are directly exposed to climate hazards exacerbated by global warming, bearing a double and deeply unequal burden. According to an annual study published by UNDP, together with Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, 1.1 billion people, or about 18% of the 6.3 billion in 109 countries analyzed, live in acute multidimensional poverty based on factors like infant mortality and access to housing, sanitation and electricity and education. Half of those people are minors. Two regions particularly affected by such poverty are Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. They are also highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. The report highlights the connection between poverty and exposure to 4 environmental risks: extreme heat, drought, floods and air pollution. A union representing more than 3,200 striking workers of Boeing said it has filed an unfair labor practice charge against the US plane maker with the National Labor Relations Board. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers represent members who assemble fighter jets and munitions at Boeing's plants in St. Louis area. The filing marks an escalation in an ongoing back and forth between the two sides as they failed to come to an agreement to end a strike that is now in its 3rd month. The workers struck work on August 4th after rejecting second offer from Boeing. They also rejected another proposal that included 24% general wage increase over 5 years and a $4,000 ratification bonus. The members, however, voted 90% in favor of a 4-year contract proposal floated by the union that Boeing refused to consider. And we're heading for a short break. There's more coming up.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colorful culture.
Hello. Johar.
Johar. It fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout हो गया.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Sri Lankan Prime Minister Harini Amarasuriya, who is on a 3-day visit to India, scheduled to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi today. Earlier on Thursday, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar met the visiting Sri Lankan Prime Minister in the national capital. The leaders discussed India's continued support to Sri Lanka and strengthening cooperation in education and capacity building. Sri Lankan Prime Minister's visit is focusing on strengthening bilateral ties between India and Sri Lanka and enhancing collaboration in education and capacity building. The visiting Egyptian Foreign Minister, Dr. Badr Abdelati, will also meet Prime Minister Modi in New Delhi today. Earlier, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar held talks with the visiting Egyptian Foreign Minister on Thursday. The leaders met for the first India-Egypt strategic dialogue in New Delhi. Delivering the opening remarks at the dialogue, Minister Jaishankar termed the meeting as a milestone in India-Egypt ties since the elevation of the relationship to a level of strategic partnership in 2023. Cooperation in various domains has intensified. India and Central Asian nations reiterated their commitment to deepening regional security cooperation at the third meeting of Secretaries of Security Council and NSAs in Kyrgyzstan. National Security Advisor of India, Ajit Doval, represented India at the meeting, joined by his counterparts from Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, while Tajikistan was represented by Deputy Secretary of its Security Council. The NSAs reiterated the importance of regular dialogue in view of changing nature of security challenges. They discussed ways to enhance cooperation in areas of countering terrorism, radicalization, extremism, and narcotics trafficking. The leaders emphasized the significance of security and stability in Afghanistan for the region. They agreed to work closely with Afghanistan in addressing security challenges as well as in the areas of connectivity and economic development, which could form the basis of long-term stability. The third meeting of the Secretaries of Security Council, NSAs, was held on the basis of consensus reached at the first India-Central Asia Summit on 27th January 2022 to hold regular meetings at the level of Secretaries of Security Council, National Security Advisors. The first meeting in this format was held in December of 2022 in New Delhi, India, and the second meeting was held on 23rd October 2023 in Astana, Kazakhstan. The third meeting was also held in the backdrop of a successful fourth India-Central Asia Foreign Ministers meeting in New Delhi in June this year. India glows as Diwali preparations begin across the country. Let's take a look at Ayodhya first. Decorations have begun at the Sri Ram Janmabhoomi temple ahead of the Deepotsav. The temple is being lit up with diyas and lights, symbolizing the victory of light over darkness as the city gears up for grand celebrations. A spectacular laser and light trial show at Ram Ki Pairi in Ayodhya wowed the onlookers, creating excitement ahead of the Deepotsav celebrations on 19th of October. Ayodhya is set to welcome a Ramayana-themed wax museum featuring lifelike models from Ram Lalla to Ravan. The museum showcases key Ramayana moments and will open to public on the occasion of Deepotsav. In Rajasthan's Udaipur, Diwali celebrations have begun with grandeur as devotees performed Ganga Aarti and Mahakaleshwar Aarti on the occasion. The city glowed with lights and devotion, marking the start of the festive season. In Mathura, markets are buzzing with festive energy as people shop for Diwali decorations, lights and Rangoli items. Despite high prices, the enthusiasm remains high, with families busy buying torans, flowers, Lakshmi Ganesh stickers to adorn their homes for Festival of Lights. In Bengal, potters are working tirelessly to make traditional clay diyas ahead of Diwali. Their handcrafted lamps not only light up homes but also promote sustainable development by supporting eco-friendly practices and local artisans. In Tamil Nadu's Coimbatore, a chocolate maker has launched a unique Crackies chocolate this Diwali, featuring edible designs like snakes, chakras, flower pots, attracting buyers in India and overseas. Some news from the world of economy. Markets in Asia are down today as worries about US banks shake investor confidence. Gold has hit a new high, Oil prices are falling and global tensions are rising, from falling stocks to shifting currencies. Here's a quick look at what's moving the markets and why investors are watching closely. Asian markets are in the red today, dragged down by fresh concerns over US banking troubles. Japan's Nikkei slips by 1%, with banking stocks leading the fall. Gold shines bright, hitting a new record high, though gains have cooled off slightly. Oil prices dipped to 5-month lows. Just as Trump and Putin prepare for peace talks in Hungary, US Treasury bonds continue their winning streak as investors bet on more rate cuts ahead. Zions and Western Alliance stocks take a hit. One reports loan losses, while the other files a fraud lawsuit. The US dollar weakens, giving way to stronger moves in the yen and Swiss franc. China is pushing back against the US, accusing Washington of stirring panic over rare earth controls. Chip giant TSMC posts record profits, while Taiwan's market still ends lower. Hong Kong and Chinese blue chip stocks tumble, both down more than 1%. Japan's central bank remains cautious, signaling no rush to raise interest rates. And with gold climbing, oil sliding and stocks under pressures, investors are looking for clarity from central banks and global leaders. The next few days could shape the direction of markets worldwide. Let's now turn to sports. India's top badminton player Lakshya Sen stunned world number 2 Andres Antonsen to reach the quarterfinals of Denmark Open badminton tournament in Odense. World number 21 Sen upset the local favourite Antonsen by 21-13, 21-14 scoreline after conceding the first 2 points in the first game. Sen on the scoreboard and never looked back as he dominated Antonsen to comfortably clinch the opener. Antonsen managed to keep the pace with Sen at the start of the second game, but Sen seized control after the interval to back the contest. This was Sen's third win in 8 matches against Antonsen. In the men's doubles, Satvik Sairaj, Ranika Reddy, Chirag Shetty also progressed to the semi-finals after 21-19, 21-17 with over Chinese Taipei's Li Zhenghui and Yang Po Swan. Satvik Chirag have extended their head-to-head record against Chinese Taipei duo to 5-0. Meanwhile, Dhruv Kapila and Tanisha Crasto also advanced to the quarterfinals of the mixed doubles after receiving a walkover. 3 Indian compound archers Madhura Damagaonkar, Jyoti Surekha Vennam and Rishabh Yadav will participate in the Archery World Cup finals in China. The Indian archers will begin their campaign in Nanjing City on Saturday. Damagaonkar confirmed her participation at the tournament by winning the women's individual compound event at Shanghai. Meanwhile, Jyoti Surekha Vennam and Rishabh Yadav, who teamed up to win the compound mixed team event at Auburndale earlier this year, qualified for the individual events through their respective rankings. 32 of the season's best archers will compete for top honours in the individual events. That's all for this edition of DD India Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.